Hi guys, it's Julia Papworth with Waiver Wire Wins for Win Daily for week 9 of the fantasy football season. Insane, right? You can find me on social media. I am at Julia Papworth. All right, guys, let's get started with quarterback. We're going to start with some people who are a little more rostered, and that is one guy. That is quarterback Kyler Murray from the Arizona Cardinals. We've been talking about him for a couple weeks. He was obviously on PUP because of his injury, but the Cardinals have activated him, and it looks like he's probably going to start in week 10. That's what I think. That's kind of like what the team has been talking about. The nice thing is they say that he has been practicing without a brace and he plans on playing without a brace. There's a lot of concern with quarterbacks coming back from ACL injuries, and there's a lot of concern that they aren't able to move as much, especially if they were a running quarterback, which is what Kyler was and is. If he's not practicing with a brace, doesn't feel like he needs one, that is a very good sign. He's 56% rostered. A lot of people have already picked him up, slot him in the IR, which is great to do. He's just great right now because you have 5 starting quarterbacks went down this week, and people are dying for a quarterback. If you can grab him, grab him. Now we are going to move on to some of the lesser rostered quarterbacks. Like I said, we lost 5 starting quarterbacks this week. They went down. Some of them are going to come back. Some of them will not. Kirk Cousins is looking like he had a torn Achilles. He will not be returning this season, it looks like. So of the replacement quarterbacks and young quarterbacks, I would say your best bet is Will Levis. He is only 2% rostered. He was a Tennessee Titans quarterback. He stepped in with Ryan Tannehill being injured, and he had a fantastic game. Just in the first half, he was 12 for 19 with 119 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he finished the whole game. He was 19 for 29, 238 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And he has quite a connection with DeAndre Hopkins, which is another benefit for him. He's the 6th quarterback in NFL history to throw for 4 touchdowns in his first career start. Look, it would be silly if the Tennessee Titans didn't stick with Will Levis. They are on a short week this week. They play on Thursday, and Rabel's kind of hinted that it's going to be Levis. I think it's pretty sure it's going to be Levis for the rest of the year, and it would be smart if they can kind of deal Ryan Tannehill, maybe get something for him before his value completely runs out as a starting quarterback. Like I said, tons of teams need someone. If you can get Will Levis, I think he will be a good start for you, especially in a superflex. If you're in a superflex league, he should already be rostered. Run, grab him, have him on your team. The other guys that you want to at least look at, they're barely rostered at all, if 1%. We're looking at Taylor Heineke, Mitchell Trubisky, and Brett Rippon. Taylor Heineke, out of those 3, is probably your best bet. He's playing for Atlanta. Desmond Ridder had a concussion that he was later cleared from, but it looks like that just may have been the opportunity for Atlanta to say, we kind of want to move on from Desmond Ridder and see what we have in our backup. Heineke has led an NFL team before. We've seen it. In 2022, he threw for almost 1,900 yards and 12 touchdowns. And when he came into the game on Sunday, 3 out of his first 4 passes were the longest pass plays for the Falcons already. And he got Pitts and Lennon involved, which we love as fantasy managers. I think you could do a lot worse than Taylor Heineke. The other 2, Mitchell Trubisky and Brett Rippon, not as good. That's the Pittsburgh backup and the Rams backup. We kind of don't know what's going on with Matt Stafford. McVay was a little cagey. It's a thumb injury. I don't know if they're going to stick with Rippon. This is stuff all to monitor. But if you can grab Heineke or Levis, I think those guys are your best bet in the quarterbacks. Chuba Hubbard, 59% rostered, Carolina Panthers. We've been talking about this for a while. The transition from Miles Sanders to Chuba Hubbard, I don't necessarily know why it's happening, but it's happening. Sanders was primarily the 3rd down back, and he came in for passing downs, but Hubbard was kind of the guy. He had 15 carries for 28 yards. He was 2 for 2 on receptions and 26 yards. It was not a high-scoring game. It was not very exciting, but it just seems like the torch has been passed to Hubbard, and in this league where everyone is getting injured all of the time, to have a starting running back, that is worth its weight in gold. So I would take a look at Hubbard. A lot of people already had him on their roster. Darrell Henderson, LA Rams, 45% rostered. Again, we talked about it. Weird game against Dallas. Stafford got injured, but Henderson looks like he will be the guy, at least until Kyron Williams comes back. There was some rotation between him and Royce Freeman, and Freeman ended up getting the touchdown, but I feel solid recommending Henderson as the RB1, at least until Williams gets back. They've got 2 good matchups coming up as well, and if Stafford is out, misses any time, they're probably going to lean on that running back a little bit more. Amari Demercado, sorry, I can never say his name. Arizona Cardinals, 36% rostered. He just showed again he's going to be the main guy in Arizona until James Conner comes back. 20 carries for 78 yards. He's probably got at least one more game with Josh Dobbs. Like I said, Kyler's looking to come back in week 10. If you want to buy into the Houston running game, which is kind of a scary thing to do, you could go with Devin Singletary. He is 20% rostered. Again, this is another like transition in the backfield. We're looking at Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce, who we all thought would be the guy. We thought he would get all of the carries and everything in Houston. And we also kind of thought Houston would be a lot worse than they are, so they would have to lean on the running back. None of this is true. Singletary had 30 yards. He had 13 yards through the air, and he's poised to take over for Pierce, it looks like. He ran 8 routes. I don't love the Houston running game, but again, if you need a running back who is startable, Devin Singletary might be on your waiver wire. One more person to keep an eye on, Tank Bigsby, Jacksonville Jaguars. He's 12% rostered. Travis Etienne went down with an injury at a point in this game. He did return and he did score, but just monitor that throughout the week. If you've got a spot to stash Bigsby, I don't think it would necessarily be a bad idea. He only had 3 carries for 9 yards, but they were all when Etienne was out. And he's only 12% rostered. He's a good running back. He's a rookie, and he would definitely seize the opportunity if for any reason Etienne had to miss any time. I mentioned it before, Josh Downs, Indianapolis Colts. He is 63% rostered. He had another really solid game, 7 for 9, 72 yards. He had the second most targets on the team. It's clear that he's the wide receiver 2 behind Michael Pittman. He didn't score a touchdown. That's okay. It's not going to happen every game, but he is definitely rosterable and startable. The other player that I feel like is totally rosterable and pretty much startable every week now is JSN. Seattle, he's 59% rostered. We kind of saw the breakout game last week. He went 3 for 4 this week, only 36 yards, but he did have a touchdown. Main thing is he has the 3rd most targets behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And Geno Smith is continuing to throw. He's the great wide receiver 3 there. He's at least always in the flex conversation for you. KJ Osborne, Minnesota, 52%. Now, this one's a little tough depending on who the Vikings get to take over for Kirk Cousins, right? If you're trading to get like a Ryan Tannehill, okay, that might be a little more flexible. But if you're going with your backup, Jaren Hall, rookie, you got to be a little more careful with KJ Osborne. He did have the most targets on the team on Sunday. He went 8 for 10 with 99 yards. And he did go in the medical tent later in the game, but he came out and he returned. But like I said, you have to keep an eye on what is going to happen with the quarterback in Minnesota before you look to maybe pick up KJ Osborne. Jahan Dotson. Welcome back, Jahan Dotson. He is 51% rostered for the Washington Commanders. A lot of people dropped Dotson. I was very pro Dotson at the beginning of the year. It was hard. I had to drop him. I had to make room on my bench for people who were going to get me wins now. He went 8 for 10. He had 108 yards and 1 touchdown. It was weird because Sam Howell was supposed to have a bad game, and he didn't. He had a fantastic game. So it's kind of risky to start Jahan Dotson, but I think he still deserves to have a place on your bench. In my deeper leagues, I still have him. I think he's someone to look at and kind of monitor and see if Howell can put together 2 weeks that are actually decent. Brandon Cooks, Dallas Cowboys. He's 41% rostered. He went 3 for 4, 49 yards, and a touchdown. That was a weird game with the Rams. Like, CeeDee Lamb was the main guy in that blowout, but they did go to Cooks a lot. He had 40 snaps and he ran 28 routes. He's somebody to keep your eye on moving forward. Brandon Cooks is always good. He's like this quiet wide receiver that flies under the radar, whichever team he's on. He's usually just a solid wide receiver 3 flex option, and it's hard to tell what kind of team Dallas is still for me, but you want to kind of monitor him. Couple more. I've got 2 New England wide receivers for you. I've got Juju Smith-Schuster, 19% rostered, and Demario Douglas, 3% rostered. The only reason I'm bringing these guys up is Kendrick Bourne went out with an injury. It looks like he tore his ACL, and I would say Demario Douglas is your best bet if you're going to go after a New England wide receiver. Juju only had one target coming back from injury. He was almost non-existent. And Demario Douglas went 5 for 7, 25 yards. He had a rush for 4 yards, and he ran 27 routes. So it seems like he is the one that they will try to get more into the game. And he also just looks better. He's faster. He's more explosive. He's only 3% rostered if you need somebody. To have some good tight ends to talk about. Jake Ferguson, Dallas tight end, 58% rostered. He played 88% of the snaps, 4 for 4, 47 yards, 1 touchdown. Great. I'll take that from a starting tight end in fantasy. He was out there for 52 snaps, looked great. Like I said, we're not exactly sure what this Dallas offense is, whether just the Dallas team in general, whether you're going to have the defense being the main focus, but Ferguson's great if you need a tight end. Taysom Hill, New Orleans Saints. He is 35% rostered. It seems like the New Orleans Saints have figured out how to get Hill involved in the receiving game. The last 2 weeks, he was a top 10 tight end. And this week, he wasn't as much receiving, but he has 63 yards rushing. He had 2 touchdowns. He had a reception, 14 yards to the air, ran 12 routes. Again, like he is like the Swiss Army knife of tight ends, and only 35% rostered. He's somebody that you could easily pick up and start pretty much any week. Trey McBride, Arizona Cardinals. He is our last guy to talk about. He's 20% rostered. I was waiting for the Trey McBride breakout. I'm super stoked to see it. Zach Ertz went down. He's on IR right now, so Trey McBride is their main tight end. He was 10 for 14 for 95 yards, and he had a touchdown. And he tied for the second most routes run. He ran 36 routes. It's really nice to see him being leaned on. I think he will continue to play a part when Kyler comes back. I'm excited to see what this offense does look like when Kyler comes back. James Conner should be back about the same time Kyler is, with McBride, Hollywood Brown. Look, they're not going to go and kill it in the playoffs or do anything like that, but it is nice to see them playing with some kind of emotion, right? All right, guys, that is it for me with the Week 9 waiver wire for Win Daily. Make sure to check me out on social media at Julia Papworth. All right, guys, good luck out there.